Welcome to episode 275 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing James Dillon, who just wrote and directed a low-budget feature film called Cargo. Another great story from someone who's out there making things happen for themselves, so stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they are very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 275. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing writer-director James Dillon. Here is the interview. Welcome, James, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
I grew up in Northern California, Santa Clara Valley area, and it was just seeing movie after movie, Saturday matinees, watching movies late at night, pretty much, and just watching them over and over again. That pretty much just, got the idea in my head. This is really what I want to do. I liked all kinds of movies, big commercial Hollywood blockbusters, little independent films that nobody else saw, foreign films, crazy horror movies, crazy, Asian horror movies, just every, films from every genre and country and their movies were pretty powerful, pretty overwhelming, and just I figured this is really what I had to just get out there and pursue. It's just one of those things that you figure, a lot of people I think sit around, especially maybe in Hollywood, when am I going to get my break? But there gets a point where you just kind of have to say you have to go out and kind of make your own way and make your own break, so to speak, make your own film, write your own script, that sort of thing. So that's where that was kind of the way I got into the industry.
Okay, so let's just back up a little bit. Did you go to film school? Like, it sounds like you were sort of that film geek. You were into all kinds of movies. Probably you were, shooting stuff with your phone or your video camera or whatever back in the day. Was there film school? And then once you got out of film school, was there some production jobs? Maybe just walk us through some of those steps before getting to Cargo. What was sort of your background between, after high school and before Cargo?
I took a couple of film classes, a couple of screenwriting classes, and then I kind of stepped away from that. And then I moved out after saving up, a good amount of money, moved out to the LA area and just, worked the day job during the day and would write at night, sending out scripts, and I just did that for a number of years and just, had a couple of meetings, couple of filmmakers, couple of producers, just, but nothing really sealed the deal until I got to try making my own film. And so I just wanted to come up with something, just a very basic, simple concept like the one we came up for Cargo.
Yeah. And so it sounds like that was your intention going into this. You wanted to be a writer, or did you want to be a director, writer, or producer, writer? What was sort of your intention going into this?
At first I thought going the screenwriter route because I figured that was, I read stories about the director Walter Hill. He heard that you could direct a film by writing a good screenplay. That was kind of his way, and so I figured, and there are other filmmakers who just made their own film, so it was basically a combination of wanting to be a writer and a director, to be both.
I gotcha. So you're living in Hollywood. You're fresh face. You get down into LA. What were you doing to get those scripts out there? I always get those questions. How do you get your scripts? It sounds like you at least got some meetings out of it. How did you get those meetings? Were you using services? Were you just doing network events? Maybe talk through some of sort of your tips and tricks for people that are screenwriters stumbling into Hollywood.
Oh, it was just a lot of persistence, and sometimes, I remember thankfully this business isn't around anymore. There before the early days of the internet, there were businesses that were kind of like scam artist things where they would you could pay like $50-$100 and they put out like a little newsletter, and they say they'd send it to, they had like a list of like producers they said they were sending it to, things like that. Now it's just kind of what they used to call cold calling. Now it's just kind of like emailing, and just there's websites now like Stage 32 that they have, where producers come on and look at scripts. So the internet makes it a lot easier, but it's just like a lot of persistence, just a lot of like sending out, emails and just contacting anybody you can. It's just kind of being like, just being kind of relentless about it, and just, keep trying, and just at a certain point is figure you have to make your own film, and then, try sending it out to distributors and producers, using things like getting an IMDb Pro account so you can find like distributors that are looking for your particular type of film.
So perfect, yeah. And it sounds like is IMDb Pro, was that sort of your main way of getting these email addresses for producers to send the scripts to?
Yeah, that was part of it, and it was just kind of like, I had a meeting with a number of years ago with a director named Noel Black, who was not really famous. Some people said he only did one good film, this classic like film noir, I think with Anthony Hopkins and or Anthony Perkins, the guy from Psycho, excuse me, not and Tuesday Weld, called Pretty Poison from the 1960s, and did like these other films, a lot of television in his career. He had a successful career, but he really didn't really take it. So I had to meet. I'd seen a film of his, one of his films from the 1980s. So I ended up just finding him online on a director's website, and I sent it to him. We had a meeting, and at his house in Santa Monica, beautiful place. But the project ended up didn't end up going nowhere. He passed away a couple of years back, but I think that was my first meeting with a professional director. But after that point, I just figured, well, nobody's doing me any favors here. I got to pretty much make my own project. So.
Yeah, so that brings us to Cargo. So let's dig into Cargo and kind of talk about that. Maybe to start, you can just give us a quick pitch or logline. What is Cargo all about?
Cargo was, I wanted to make, I remember I was at one of my favorite movie theaters, ArcLight Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard, and I went to see a couple of films there. One that I was in there all by myself. It was a film called Buried with Ryan Reynolds. Another one was called, with Tom Hardy, called Lock, and I thought I was going to see another Tom Hardy film with James Gandolfini. I forget what the title of it was, but I didn't know anything about Lock. It's like, is this movie going to take place 100% inside a speeding SUV on the English countryside? It's like, yeah, it was. So I just like saw these two films. I thought about other one-man films like, All Is Lost with Robert Redford, just like on a man on a, boat lost at sea. I thought that is something, a similar concept. And I was working for a container shipping company, and I was walking around inside one day. I thought, being trapped in these, all right, that wouldn't be as scary as saying being buried alive. Being trapped in one of these, but it would give a lot more movement. You could add a lot more interesting camera movements, be a confined space. And, the thing about it was, we didn't have to change, the lighting. The lighting pretty much stayed the same the whole time. And you're working with one actor, and just doing voiceovers. You can move pretty fast. I think we shot 50 pages, in the first 3 days. And that was doing like 5, 6, 7 takes per like setup, stuff like that. So we're getting plenty of takes, but you can move pretty fast, with one actor. So yeah, it was pretty great. Yeah, we shot it in about 8 days.
Okay. Wow. So I actually had Chris Sparling on years ago on the podcast, and I'd be curious. He's the writer of Buried, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Did you get any pushback? Because that was immediately, I read the log line, on IMDb, and it's like, that's immediately what I thought. And Buried has kind of become the gold standard, obviously. You can't really do much better in terms of like one guy in one confined location. Did you get some pushback from people, from producers or distributors? It's too much like Buried. Was it good? Maybe you could kind of draft on some of those one location films. So maybe it was a plus. But maybe you can talk about that a little bit. Were you concerned that there might be some too many similarities?
There was, but of course, those are the films that influence it. I think they're great films, but doesn't mean you can't have, I like to say, years ago there was a film, I think a great film called Jaws that came out, and then there was like a lot of Jaws knockoffs. There was Piranha, I think, and there was Piranha 2, which was James Cameron's first film. I think there's really only one good Jaws knockoff. Is the film that came out in 1980 with Robert Forster, whose career was pretty much over by that time. And Quentin Tarantino rediscovered him for Jackie Brown years later, a film called Alligator, and written by, I think, director John Sayles, I think, and it's pretty much, so I was kind of thinking, in those terms, maybe I can make, kind of like, a film that's like based off a similar premise, but, putting a new twist on it, something like that. But there were some reviewers, that like the folks at Ain't It Cool, Freddie Beans, Ain't It Cool News, he liked it quite a bit. The young woman who I forgot her name is at the website called horror website called 1428 Elm, which is the address of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. She liked it quite a bit, but there were others who were like, very dismissive of it from the get-go. It just said, and up next we're going to review Buried. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean Cargo. Things like that. Smart asses, people who probably, you could tell, read between the lines, somebody who was just, if you don't like a film, you don't like a film. Not everything is for everybody. I get that. But, you can sometimes tell when people are just kind of bitter hacks who would never have the guts to make their own film, and just, so there was kind of that. I mean, if they don't like it, I completely have to accept that, but there was some pushback from certain critics and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. But it doesn't sound like it really worried you much. I mean, you kind of knew what you're doing and you wanted to make your movie that you wanted to make.
Yeah, you just kind of have to jump in with both feet. You're just, the criticism, I might think the same thing myself, but, you just got to have to go ahead and just try and make the best film you can and just hope for the best.
For sure. So let's talk about your writing process a little bit. Where do you typically write? Do you have an office or you go to Starbucks? What does that look like?
I usually write, at home. Sometimes in, the morning. I found sometimes it can really vary. Sometimes there's been times that I've written from like morning till night, but a lot of times I find myself writing in the morning and I quit like during, midday, something like that. And sometimes I'll just sit there kind of like, and nothing is coming, and just as you're blocked up, and other times it just all, comes out, and so it varies. Usually it's early in the morning, afternoon, stuff like that, around that time.
Okay. When you're working on a screenplay, how much time do you spend doing the outline, basically the index cards, the outlining, as opposed to just being in final draft and actually writing the dialogue and character descriptions and stuff? How much time do you spend in each section, roughly?
It really depends. I don't really use index cards. What I really do is just kind of like write out like on either in a Word document or something like that, or just on a piece of paper, just like one line describing like a chunk of like a scene or a section, like this happens, this happens, this happens. And when I have enough of that, I usually don't have might have like certain sections, planned out, but I have a rough idea of where it's going, and just trying. My problem usually when I'm writing is people, when they write, they have, they write and they have too much and they have to cut back. A lot of times when I write something, it's just like I can come up, with a certain amount, but it's not quite feature length. So I have to like, think to like get it to feature length. I have trouble coming up with enough material. I usually get there, but a lot of people have the exact same problem. They write too much. They have to throw everything out. Me, I kind of write I kind of like to keep the prose like kind of very tight and and contained, and just what they always say, they teach you like film is a visual medium, show don't tell, that kind of a thing. But it just that's the usually my process is of writing something.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some of the potential problems you had writing a movie like Cargo, where you do literally have one actor in very limited locations. As I said, Buried, I think, did a pretty creative job with some of that stuff, and you obviously were well versed with Buried, so you can't just completely rip that stuff off. How did you come up with new ways of making this interesting? Such a static environment, interesting, visually interesting, just interesting as a movie-going experience.
You just start off and you some of it is you just think of things from shamelessly borrow from other people's work. Maybe like using when a scene is becoming you're supposed to like up the tension of it. Maybe you just have the cinematographer do a spin around. We did different things in this. Some people said it worked, some people said it didn't. Where you would hear a character on the you'd see the main character talking to a character on the line. There was another character who was like say in a car or something like that, and he just tells him, like maybe he's being chased by the cop. He says, "Just get out of there." And maybe we'd do something that's sort of like we'd have the steady cam just kind of like zoom by the actor, like as if the car was like peeling out or burning away or burning rubber. Just if there's like a chase scene in the camera, we just sort of like move around the actor just in kind of like a zooming motion. Some people said it worked, some people did, but I thought that was a little different take on it. But it was just writing out a relatively detailed shot list about just to keep mixing it up. Sometimes a perfectly good static shot would work. Sometimes and just like a 1 point perspective type shot, and other times just like a spinning and just like a very signal variations of like just wide shots and like just getting extreme close-ups to like the side of the actor's face, just like things like that. It was just keeping it mixed up, keeping a lot of variables, and just a lot of different things just to keep that one actor, one character setting just visually interesting.
Sure, sure. How do you know when your script is ready to show to others? You wrote this draft of the script. What does that development process look like? But first, how do you know? Like, how do you know it doesn't need another rewrite? Maybe talk through that a little bit.
Well, for this one, I wrote it pretty fast because my scripts in the past, I figured I would just sweat and go over and over. This is a number of years ago, and go over and over it, And I look back at some of those scripts, and I'm like, everybody's got a lot of, whether even really great writers have got, things in on their computer or wherever in a drawer somewhere that are just, unreadable. And I look at some of those early scripts. Why did I put so much work into this? It just doesn't work. With this, I figure I just write this pretty fast, and I figured the thing I think is, when as I'm writing it, am I interested? Am I, engaged? And and when it was done, I'd send sections to my producer, J.C. Masick, who also wrote the original novelization, which he got published by publisher Bloodhound Books, and it's out on Amazon now, and been pretty well received. And I would just send it to JC, and he was also the producer, and he also did a few of the voiceover roles. And he would just write me back, and he just said, this, that, and the other thing, and he'd just point out things like, little details to make, where maybe there was a lapse in logic, things like that. So he was kind of my sounding board. So it was just me and him back and forth until we finally, said, okay, let's go for it. Let's make it.
Mm-hmm. How did you approach screenplay structure with something like this? Is it the classic 3-act structure with your act breaks and stuff? Maybe talk through that a little bit, because obviously with one character in one location, maybe that gets a little modified. But what's your approach to screenplay structure, and then specifically to this project?
It's just really more about a lot of times I felt that sometimes I read like a lot of screenwriting books, and they would specify things like this certain thing has to happen on this certain page by this certain page, and I felt that if I just kind of let that go, and because it was just too structured, just like it just kind of like was a kind of like not just it was kind of freeing to just kind of let all those rules kind of go. I mean, yeah, you got to have a certain amount of structure, but following a lot of those rules that you might hear in a screenwriting class or a book or something, read a book or something like that, it's just, I don't know, they were just kind of limiting to me. So I kind of just had to push those by the wayside and just kind of just like I was thinking, just keep raising the stakes, keep putting your character through hell, just keep raising the stakes and upping the ante, so to speak, and just sort of just builds to a climax pretty much at the end. That's how I saw it. So that's how I came about it. It was kind of like not really looking at the classic screenplay structure so much as just trying to like keep the story moving, keep it engaging, and keep upping the ante for the character, raising the stakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's sound advice. So now you're done with the screenplay. You have a draft that you like. You want to go shoot it. What was your process for actually raising the money? Did you guys self-fund it? Did you guys do Kickstarter? Did you guys go and to distributors and try and pre-sell? Maybe talk through that a little bit.
Basically, I just funded it myself from savings, and
okay.
from credit cards and things like that, and we just we shot it actually in the biggest part was we're thinking, where am I going to get a 40-foot cargo container? But I'd driven around. I knew you could probably rent them, but the thing is, I'm an apartment dweller in LA, and sometimes I drive by people who would have, cargo containers, like they have a big open front yard or in their backyard or something like that. So I figured, wow, if I just had somebody who had one of those containers, and eventually I found a place that was local, and we just decided to put it in the front yard of my cinematographer, and also one of the producers, Chris Gosh's front yard of his new house that he had bought. And I was on the phone to him. We got the 40-foot container, and he said it was being delivered. Then he calls me on the phone, and I'm, driving down there. He says, "We're not going to be able to use the 40-foot container. It's not fitting in the yard. It's just not going to fit." And I said, okay, I was very disappointed, and I hung up, and I thought, I needed that 40-foot container because I wanted it for the pacing. But we got the 30-foot container. When they delivered the 30-foot container, it's like delivering a tank. I mean, it's just a container, but they put it down like, okay, this is, going to be more than good enough. So when we went and did that, and we opened it up, and we walk in, it's just beautifully pristine painted, pristine white inside the container, like it was brand new, not a scratch on it. And my cinematographer told me, wow, this is not going to work with this. The light's going to bounce all around. We can't shoot in this all white container. And I didn't see it as all white, but I was just happy it was there. So he just suggested, what we have to do is paint this container. I said, we can't paint this container. It's a rented container. It's written in my name. No, what we do is we paint it whatever we want to paint it. Then we paint it back. He had much more of a guerrilla filmmaker type thing. Let's do it right if we're going to do it. So it's like, so they went and got 10, 20 cans of spray paint, and they spray painted it all black and strung up the lights how I wanted them. And it looked like, very much like something like, a Hannibal Lecter type villain would put, a character in. So yeah, so it's just kind of like, very much, guerrilla indie filmmaking, which you could say,
Yeah. So let's talk about, then you get the film done. What was your process there for finding a distributor? Did you go to a lot of festivals? Did you end up approaching distributors directly? Maybe talk through that just a little bit.
I was going through. Got on IMDb Pro, and I was just looking at similar horror films and figured who distributed them, and just contacting them directly. A lot of them just you go on their websites and they will just say, submit to us. We're always looking for new films. Or I was going through sales agents and people in places in the UK and United States and Canada, and a number of them said okay, we'll check it out. But a number of them said, well, we like it, but we don't really think we can market it. And finally, we came down to 2 or 3 that made us an offer, and one sales agent made us an offer. And we finally went with Wild Eye Releasing, because they really have a passion for, they mostly release horror films, but they also release things like the occasional documentary and things like that. But I just got the feeling they really had a passion for this type of filmmaking, this type of indie horror filmmaking.
Yeah. So I just like to end the interviews by asking the guest if there's something they've seen recently. I'm always curious what people are watching. Something on Netflix, HBO, Hulu, at the movie theater. What have you seen recently that you thought was really excellent?
Catching up a lot of The Walking Dead. Something that was really excellent. Nothing comes really to mind, but I always blank out. I see everything, but I just kind of blank out at this, But there was one thing that I saw. I rewatched great South Korean film Old Boy again recently, and that's an absolutely brilliant film. If anybody hasn't seen that, and watched part of I've been watching. This is an older film, Apocalypse Now. The classic, Martin Sheen, and the gentleman who did got a lot of heat. Ryan Johnson, his first film, Brick. That's something I rewatched that recently. So that's a great film that people. He got a lot of controversy for The Last Jedi, but his first film, Brick, I think even his haters, I think, would really enjoy that. So I'd say check definitely, if you haven't seen Old Boy, check that out. Or Ryan Johnson's first film, Brick. It's a brilliant film.
Yeah. So two good films for sure. So what's the best way for people to see Cargo? Do you know what the release schedule is going to be like? Where is it going to be, and how can people catch it?
It's streaming right now on video on demand, pay-per-view, and it's also right now on Amazon streaming, so they can just go and find it on Amazon Prime right now on DVD or on streaming. And they can also check out the original screenplay by Thorsten Quisling of the band Tangerine Dream, the frontman of Tangerine Dream. I grew up seeing a lot of classic films like Risky Business and Sorcerer were scored by Tangerine Dream. They were popular in the 70s, 80s, and I actually put an ad on Craigslist looking for a Tangerine Dream type score, and somebody saw this in Berlin, Germany, somebody on Thorsten's team, and he contacted me saying, hello, this is Thorsten Quisling of Tangerine Dream. This sounds like fun, sir. Sure, just send me some copy of screen of the film. And he ended up doing it, and you can get that. It's on download and vinyl and CD. It was actually scored. He's a big Beatles fan, so the masters for the vinyl of the soundtrack were scored at Abbey Road Studios. So so it's really a brilliant soundtrack. So we've got it's a triple threat. We've got the film, we've got the official published Conversation by J.C. Mazik on Amazon by Bloodhound Books, and this great, very authentic. If you like the theme music from the TV show Stranger Things, and that's very Tangerine Dream-esque. For if you've remember any of those films with those Tangerine Dream scores, it's very reminiscent of that. You can pick up the Cargo official soundtrack vinyl CD or download on Amazon too by Thorsten Quisling. Tangerine Dream is really great happy accident that somebody like him he did it wasn't a Tangerine Dream album. It was with his other group Picture Palace Music, but you want a Tangerine Dream soundtrack, and the guy who's in Tangerine Dream who took over for the late Edgar Froese actually composes your soundtrack and performs all the instruments himself. It's pretty great. So
yeah, I'll say that's a fantastic story.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty great.
Yeah. So well, that's great. So what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Blog, Twitter, anything you're comfortable sharing, I'll round up and put in the show notes.
You can just look me up on James Dillon, James.Dillon4 on Facebook, or you can just look me up on IMDb, and you can find me there.
Perfect. James, I really appreciate your time today, taking some time out to talk with me. Great interview. I wish you the best of luck with this film.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, James. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. There have been a number of success stories come out of the service. You can find out about all the SYS Select successes by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. Also on SYS podcast episode 222, I talked with Steve Deering, who was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. These services include the newsletter. This monthly newsletter goes out to a list of over 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also provide screenwriting leads. We have partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads services, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, features, TV, and web series pilots, all types of projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you get access to the SYS Select forum, where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. We also have a number of screenwriting classes that are recorded and available in the SYS Select forum. These are all the classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to those whenever you want once you join. The classes cover every part of writing your screenplay, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that is sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer Brian Ackley, who just wrote a cool sci-fi feature film called 2050, starring Dean Cain. We talk about this project and how he got involved with it, as well as the early stages of his career doing short films and low-budget features. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.